Today, Ilford are announcing that they are releasing their Kentmere Pan 100 and 400 film stocks in medium format. And I was lucky enough to get sent a couple of rolls of each to test out. For those of you who are not already aware of the Kentmere range from Harman Technology, Kentmere film is sold as a more affordable alternative to their own Ilford stocks. So in a time like now where film prices are rocketing, this is definitely welcome news. So of course, Kentmere Pan 100 and 400 already exist in 35mm format, but this new 120 format is helping to introduce more affordable film stocks into medium format, which is great for someone like me who works predominantly with medium format film. So today I wanted to share a few images from Kentmere 100 and Kentmere 400 on medium format. Let's start off with Kentmere 400. So you might remember a little while back I took to Sheffield to shoot some portraits of Ethan at my friend Andy's studio. Well, later that day we headed to Sheffield's Botanical Gardens, where I tested the first roll of Kentmere 400. It was quite a bright day, which is maybe a little bit unusual for autumn in the north of England, but it meant that the lighting conditions were perfect to start shooting with black and white. I always find that when you're shooting with black and white, it forces you to think more about the fundamentals of photography, such as light, such as composition, such as line, shape, shadow. I was able to test how this film stock fared in bright conditions where the contrast was high and the shadows were strong, but also inside the greenhouse where it was a little bit more diffused by the glass. So I shot this first roll with the Mamiya RZ67 and a 50mm lens, which works out roughly equivalent to a 25mm focal length on a 35mm camera. There's a great sharpness to the film. It has a classic looking grain structure that offers a charm that only comes with film, that kind of, you can't emulate it with digital grain, but it also isn't too overly intrusive. The grain's not too thick, it's not too noticeable. For me, the contrast levels were spot on. I tend to like film, especially black and white film, to be on the more contrasty side, and this has a good level of contrast without it being too much. I feel like it's a perfect middle ground between not enough and too much. This photo of the man outside the greenhouse is probably my favourite from this roll. I love the levels of contrast, but also the way that the dappled light is rendered on the top of the building. But next up, I wanted to test Kentmere 400 on a portrait shoot in portrait scenarios. So I took to the street of Manchester with my Mamiya RZ67 again, but this time with the 110mm lens. And that is roughly equivalent to about a 55mm focal length on 35mm. So on this day, the rain was really heavy, it was really overcast, and we didn't have as much light as maybe I had wanted to, but it was nice to use this film stock in a completely different lighting scenario. Referencing the contrast again, I found that the contrast on Kentmere 400 was perfect for these portrait scenarios. It wasn't too strong that it took away from the portraits or the detail in the portraits, but it was strong enough that, it separated the different elements of the photos effectively. So next up, it was time to try some Kentmere 100. So Kentmere 100 is a medium speed ISO 100 panachromatic black and white film stock. It's characterized by fine grain, good sharpness, and a wide and forgiving exposure latitude. The first roll of Kentmere 100 that I shot was in the studio with a really simple 2-light setup. The all black, really classic outfit that the model opted for was perfect for this level of contrast, where the white cove behind worked really well with the all black outfit. Ilford does describe this as medium contrast, but my experience with the film stock is that it's actually quite high contrast. Of course, that could be down to a lot of things like the way I'm shooting it, the way it's been developed and scanned. But yeah, I noticed that this was quite a bit more contrasty than Kentmere 400. You can see this in how deep the black point is, especially given that the 2-light setup had one large softbox pointed at the front of the model, so that should have or would have illuminated the outfit a little bit more. I'll show you an example compared to Kodak Gold 200 shot with the same lighting setup, and you can see how there's a little bit more detail in those shadows. I think that the characteristics of Kentmere 100 make it perfect for a classic portrait setup, especially when you want to accentuate shapes, lines, silhouettes. And at 100 speed, it's also perfect to use with strobe lighting. So my next and final roll was the Kentmere 100 again, but I used the Fuji GA645 this time, and I used it in a bit more of a casual manner, so a little bit more to kind of take with me to other shoots, shoot some behind the scenes, shoot just kind of like everyday stuff. The contrast of the film stock is displayed again within this series of photos, which were taken on a wet rooftop at sunset. You know, the lighting was really direct, really harsh here, and it's made more dramatic by the deep shadows. I also shot a few photos at sunrise on the same day where the light was much softer. I was really impressed with how the soft light was rendered, especially where you can see it hitting the track and creating kind of like a radial gradient. I think I definitely preferred it used in these soft light scenarios for this roll. I also took 2 photos on this roll using the built-in flash on the Fuji GA645, one in the studio and one on the racetrack at the Man City Etihad grounds. The contrasty nature of this film stock really complements the direct flash kind of vibe, and I definitely think it's effective in this kind of scenario. So whilst Ilford don't actually describe Kentmere Pan range as being professional film stocks, they do note that the film stocks can be used to create results that professionals would be proud of. And I think that definitely rings true. At a lower price point, this does really make it, you know, the perfect films to kind of put in your camera and just head out, a little bit like I did with the Fuji GA645 for some more kind of like snapshot style stuff. But equally, you know, especially after seeing the results with the portrait shoot I did on 400, I would be happy to use this in professional circumstances as well. But hopefully you can get your hands on a couple rolls of both film stocks, try it out for yourself and see what you think. A huge thank you to Ilford for reaching out and allowing me to test these film stocks. It was such an honour, and you guys will know by now that I always enjoy testing new film stocks that I haven't tried before. I'm definitely going to be getting my hands on a few more rolls, so you'll be seeing some more work from me shot with Kentmere 100 and 400 on the channel. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.